Hello everybody, and welcome back to Cam Critiques. The WarioWare series houses many of Nintendo's best ever releases, but its concept makes it pretty tough to create satisfying new entries. The core of WarioWare is built upon creativity and surprise. The game doesn't work if you know what to expect. So, while the series never really died, it's been quite a long time since we had a traditional WarioWare game. DIY, Game & Wario, and WarioWare Gold were all enjoyable in their own way, but they didn't exactly satisfy my craving for new WarioWare content. But finally, after more than a decade, a traditional, new, microgame-focused WarioWare game is back. So, was it worth the wait? Does WarioWare get it together to live up to its legendary predecessors? Well, you'll have to watch to find out. Let's get started by talking about the gameplay. The gameplay of WarioWare is somewhat paradoxically incredibly simple to understand yet incredibly difficult to explain. The bulk of the gameplay of a standard WarioWare is made up of short microgames where you're given a simple instruction, often only one word, and you have a few seconds to figure out what to do and how to do it. There are hundreds of these microgames and thus hundreds of different instructions you have to follow, but they're all understood pretty intuitively. Despite all of these instructions, the gameplay is always very simple. Pretty much anyone can play WarioWare. You never need to perform a tricky sequence of inputs or anything like that to succeed. The challenge is in figuring out what to do, rather than figuring out how to do something. To keep things fresh, WarioWare often builds its microgames around a console's gimmicks. Touch on the DS used the touchscreen, and smooth moves on the Wii used motion controls, for example. But the Switch doesn't really have a unique gimmick like that to rely on. So they deemed to do something else to keep the game interesting, surprising, and exciting. And the gimmick they used to do that is pretty clever. In Get It Together, unlike other WarioWare games, you control one of many characters actually on the screen, almost as if the microgame were a mini platforming level. These characters have pretty much entirely different abilities, but the pool of microgames is the same regardless of character choice. So now, the challenge isn't just in figuring out what to do on a basic level. You need to figure out a different solution depending on your character's abilities. When I first heard about this gimmick, I was a little worried. It looks neat on paper, but it seems so hard to properly balance. I also thought the microgames might start to feel samey, seeing as all of them have to function as platforming levels. But doubting the creativity of the team behind WarioWare is clearly a mistake on my part. The microgames here are just as wild and enjoyable as ever, and the gimmick is handled exceptionally well. The thing I was most worried about with this gimmick was how the characters could possibly be balanced. With over 200 different microgames and more than a dozen wildly unique characters, it would be nearly impossible to make every character stand on an even playing field. So I was worried there would only be a few characters really worth playing. And I was kind of right. If I get to pick characters, I will pretty much always choose Ashley, Mike, and Dribble, and I will never choose 5V or 9V. However, this isn't a problem at all. Each set of microgames has a different leaderboard that tracks your score for using all the characters in rotation rather than just a few. There are also weekly online challenges that sometimes force you to use certain characters. So yes, not every character is built equally, but you're probably encouraged to use every character regardless. It just makes adapting to each microgame all the more exciting when its difficulty varies so much by the character you're playing as. The multiple playable characters in this game also really increase the replay value. I generally drop WarioWare games pretty fast, as once I've beaten every microgame once, the challenge is pretty much done. However, by the time I'd beaten every microgame and Get It Together, I hadn't even faced 10% of the puzzles the game had to offer, considering the differing solutions for microgames based on different characters. Get It Together is able to maintain the magic of WarioWare for much longer than ever before, thanks to the sheer variety in playstyles. The online challenges have kept me coming back as well. I stopped playing WarioWare Gold on 3DS for a while after a single weekend, but I've been coming back to Get It Together for at least a bit every single day since launch. So I've talked about the core gameplay of WarioWare Get It Together, but what about the game's structure? This game offers a short story mode like the series usually does, which is how you unlock every character and how you're first introduced to each microgame. But what really matters is the multiplayer modes. Actually, even the story is multiplayer in this one, with 2 players being able to control different characters in every single microgame. There's a lot more to it than just co-op though. There are a ton of battle modes which vary wildly in structure and also in quality. All the ones built around microgames are pretty great, but the ones that don't use microgames get old really fast. They're just a little too simple. Still, playing this game with friends is a blast, it has variety, and there are more than enough solid competitive and co-op options. The online stuff isn't traditionally multiplayer, but it offers some fun competition with competing for high scores as well. The only real problem here is that, for whatever reason, you can't play actual multiplayer online. You can only play co-op and versus modes locally. It's a baffling exclusion, especially given the current state of the world. As far as side content goes, there sadly isn't much. You can give gifts, called prezzies here, bought with coins unlocked through a basic achievement system in the story mode to each character to level them up, which unlocks basic customization options and some neat artwork. But that's about it, and there isn't too much to actually engage with there. WarioWare Gold had lots of neat unlockables to mess around with, and I was sad to see that Get It Together had nothing of the sort. Still, regardless, WarioWare Get It Together's gameplay is excellent. It's unique and surprising, even for WarioWare, but it hasn't lost the core charm or appeal of the series. It's fun by yourself, it's fun working with your friends, and it's fun competing against others. The replay value is also higher than ever. It's great to have another WarioWare game that offers traditional microgame gameplay, but is still genuinely exciting to play, even as a longtime fan. I wish there was more side content, and I wish the online was more robust. But WarioWare Get It Together is an absolute joy to play. I give the gameplay of WarioWare Get It Together a 9 out of 10. Now, onto the story and characters. The story of WarioWare Get It Together is basically incomprehensible, as it usually is in this series. Wario and his friends are sucked into a game they just finished developing, and they have to find a way to escape. That's really it. The actual explanation for why the events of the game are happening is honestly pretty boring. But once you're in the game within this game, each set of microgames gives a quick story based on a certain character, as the series typically does. None of these quick scenes really stand out as the best in the series, but they're still charming and pretty entertaining. Sadly, the story here really fails to leave much of an impression. It's not like it was ever really important for the series, but every character does something more memorable in other WarioWare titles, and the single player content is over after only a few hours. The characters are definitely better though. It's a little disappointing that they don't really introduce anybody new, but almost every classic WarioWare character is here, and they've mostly featured more prominently than ever before, seeing as most are now fully playable. The characters all have charming, if simple personalities, and fantastic, unique designs, and their abilities fit pretty much perfectly with what you'd expect they'd do in a microgame. So yeah, the story and characters of WarioWare Get It Together are alright. Nothing's outstanding here, but nothing's bad either. The short cutscenes are still entertaining, and the characters are still charming and fantastically designed. So, I give the story and characters of WarioWare Get It Together a 7 out of 10. Now, onto the visuals and sound. The visuals of WarioWare have always been a little hard to describe. Sometimes the art of a microgame looks like an MS Paint drawing an 8-year-old could slap together in 5 minutes. Other times it looks like an incredibly detailed, impressive work that clearly took a very talented artist a long time to compose. This gives the game a ton of its unique personality, and I'm a big fan. The game has so much variety and style that the section for artists in the credits is vastly longer than that for even programmers. I don't want to show too much. Seeing the unique art is part of the fun in my opinion. Just know this game looks great in a very unique way. The character models, which are new to the series, also look pretty nice. The chibi style works pretty well. They definitely look a little weird compared to the 2D art that makes up most of the microgames the characters traverse, but it's not really a big problem. The music is sadly more disappointing. WarioWare is known for some of the most out there, catchy music in gaming. I think the series has more vocal themes than any other from Nintendo, and many of them have been stuck in my head for years and years now. But this game only has one vocal theme, and the rest of the music doesn't really stand out at all. That new vocal theme is great, but you only hear it for a very small part of the game. I was hoping to add more than one song to my playlist from here, but it is what it is. At least the sound design is pretty great. The sound effects themselves carry the same level of variety as the artwork and gameplay styles, and they all fit pretty well. I wish the soundtrack was a little better, but it still has some great stuff, and the art is fantastic. So, I give the visuals and sound of WarioWare Get It Together an 8.5 out of 10. In conclusion, WarioWare Get It Together is pretty great. It brings a new gameplay style to the WarioWare franchise while maintaining the charm and appeal the series always had. It offers a good amount of content with lots of replay value. It has fantastic art and characters. Sure, it may be lacking in great music, and the story may be a little underwhelming, but this game is still very enjoyable. It's not the best WarioWare, but it's absolutely worth a purchase. I give WarioWare Get It Together an 8.5 out of 10. Well, that does it for my review. If you liked this video, I'd really appreciate it if you liked, commented, hit the notification bell, and or subscribed. I'd also recommend you check out some of my other content like my ranking of the 2D Metroid games. Thank you all for watching, have a great rest of your day.